huanale hua makanoyo. How mai ka ua ki no hona I hilo kaina ka wau o kulu kulua. O hilo aina holule huanale hua makanoyo. How mai ka ua kilihune o kanahele. Holule huanale hua makanoyo. How mai ka ua kilihune o kanahele. Ia me ke ala o ka mai leo pana ewa e kuno mai nā vai mo o ai luku. He lua luku e nā kānaka. I kai pala aua e wana I haili ka leo muki ki o nā manu. Holo noa e wai o lama me ka wailapo. I ho kai me wai loa pā I ke kula o hanakahi. A kai kamana o a ke aloha I noho aloha I moku ola. I ola e nā kini e, I ola e nā kini e. A pā I ke kula o hanakahi. A kai kamana o a ke aloha I noho aloha I moku ola. I ola e nā kini e, I ola e nā kini e.
Nani male ho I ka ike na ea, ka nani o wai a ke a ea. Ka vai o lama ea, ma lama lama a vai I ea. Nani male ho I ka ike na ea, ka nani o wai a ke a ea. Ka vai o lama ea, ma lama vai I ea. Ai Hilo na. No I moku ola ea, he moku au I ke kai ea. E hoku hine I ea, ka hune hune kai ea. Ka lana hoi moku ola ea, he moku au I ke kai ea. E hoko pulu ili nei ea, ka hune hune kai ea. Kapua o ka lehua ea, Paina mai kapua no ea, no ka ua kangi lehua ea. Leana I ka leilani ea, kapua o ka lehua ea. Paina mai kapua na ea, no ka ua kangi lehua ea. No ka ua kangi lehua ea. No ka ua kangi lehua ea.
Hello and welcome everyone who's joining us this evening. It's a pleasure to share a little bit about the Hilo Reusable Foodware Program and also to get your feedback on how to design a system that's going to work best for us. Just to start out, my name is Jennifer Navarra. I'm the Program Director of Zero Waste Hawaii Island. Unfortunately, Ku'ule is she's our cultural advisor and she's usually the one who presents in our meetings like this, but unfortunately she is under the weather, so I will be presenting instead of her tonight. We also have Paul Martin. Paul, you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Paul Martin, the new technical assistant here with Zero Waste Hawaii Island. I look forward to engaging with the businesses of Hilo and outreaching more to implement this system.
And then Ellen, you want to introduce yourself too, since you're on?
Sure. Aloha. I'm Ellen Okuma. I retired academic librarian from Hawaii Community College, and I help with doing research and whatever else needs doing. So nice to see everyone, I think. If I can see everyone.
I know it's hard with the screen up to see. I see, oh, John is here. Hi, Jen. Everybody, hi, Alex. A few people I don't know, but we're a really small group, so we can keep it kind of informal tonight. If you guys have questions as I'm going through the presentation, I'm happy to answer them, or if you have feedback also, we can do that. So let's dive right in. I seem to be changing the slide. I'll stop sharing for a second. Okay. Are you guys still seeing the presentation?
Your screen went away, Jennifer.
It went away? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Try this again. All right, you see it now? Okay. So like I said, we can kind of keep this informal or really small group. We'll just start with a really brief project overview. Then we'll dive in and talk about the different elements of the system design. And then we'll review some of the previously asked questions, and then we'll just close out. And if we end early, we can end early. So I introduced myself, Paul introduced himself, and Ellen is here as well. Ku'ule, as I mentioned, couldn't be here this evening. She's not well. And then also TC and Yuko are two of our awesome volunteers that are vacationing right now. And then Devin Brown is one of our interns. He started out as a Bonner student intern. I think he just finished that program, but he's actually going to be joining us over the summer to help Paul in doing some of the outreach to businesses. So given a very brief project overview, just to kind of get us all like mindset on how a reuse system works. Essentially, it's going to be a very similar system as for the customers on the customer end. Customer will check out a container when they get their food or drink and to-go container, but the difference will be it would be reusable as opposed to disposable. Once they're done consuming their food and drink, they would then return that container to many of the convenient locations around Hilo. We will have return bins, basically throughout the entire city and maybe in some satellite areas as well. And then after that, this is where what really makes reuse systems work, which is kind of this reverse and forward logistics piece, which would be done by a service operator, which would then pick up those containers, transport them to a reusable dishwashing or a washing facility where they'd be sanitized and dried. And then they would be redistributed back to vendors to be used over and over again. So that's essentially how a reuse system functions. I know a lot of people like to bring their own containers, and technically, by Department of Health guidelines, that's not really permitted, except for in cases where there's protocols that have been put in place. For example, Starbucks allows you to bring in your own cups, and they have approved protocols with the Department of Health that allows them to do that. So that we have seen a lot of interest in people also having the ability to bring their own containers. So that's something we will see if we can help address in this system as well. So we have many different project partners working on this program. Zero Waste Hawaii Island's role is to be the program partner or the local partner of Perpetual. So we've been doing a lot of the community engagement over the last year and a half. Perpetual is really the lead on this work. They are not only working in Hilo, but they're also working in 3 additional cities in the US. One is Galveston, Texas, Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Savannah, Georgia are the 3 other cities. And what Perpetual is really attempting to do is to create some demonstration projects of reusable foodware systems operating at scale and that are an immersive experience, meaning that essentially reuse is the default and there's the opportunities to easily return a container, to check out a container if you'd want to, pretty much anywhere you go and get food or drink. Other 2 partners in this work are the Hawaii Sea Grant Program and also the County of Hawaii's Department of Environmental Management. Their roles in this work is really currently as being recipients of some funding for this project. The Environmental Protection Agency funded the Solid Waste Recycling Infrastructure Grant that will fund $1.5 million. This will support the infrastructure pieces for the program. So that's the transport vehicles, the return bins, the dishwasher, and the tracking technology, which the tracking technology is really important. We need to make sure that we have really high return rates, like around at least 90%, if not greater, to make sure we have a well-functioning system in place. The other recipient of the grant is the Hawaii Sea Grant Program. Paul is actually, his position is funded by that, and Devin and another intern over the summer. The funding also will go towards, well, it's essentially is helping to provide technical assistance to businesses, schools, and also community organizations with meal programs. There is also some funding for equipment in this grant for the trays, for example, for the schools to transition over to or to pilot reuse in some of the schools. There'll also be funding for return bins that would go inside of the restaurants, and also some just additional storage equipment. We also applied for some climate pollution reduction grant. This is a large state level application that went in. It was a $50 million application for projects all over the state. That would be an additional funding that would get us an additional type of dishwashing machine if we got it, help with leasing a commercial space for the dishwashing facility in the first 5 years. And also would allow us to hire on someone at the county level, a reuse extension agent that could help expand this program countywide, at least in East Hawaii initially. And also would have money for some containers and solar and help us upgrade vehicles to be electric. So we have been engaged in the system design process since the start of this year. We had 7 public meetings that were open to anyone to participate. We actually had pretty good participation. We then took all that input that we got during those meetings and drafted the first system design plan. We're now in the public comment period currently. We had 1 feedback session in April. That was an in-person event at Keaukaha Elementary School, had really awesome attendance. We had at least 40 community members that participated in the program. And we also are now engaged in our second feedback session. We hope to have the final draft of this project complete by the end of June. Sorry, I'm like checking my battery level. I need to get my charger. So Ellie, are you here? Could you take over just for a second while I grab my phone charger or my computer charger? I did not realize.
Sure, Jennifer, we don't want to lose you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellie Moss. I'm with Perpetual. This slide is an overview of the system design and implementation process. As you can see, this gives an overview of everything from the very beginning of, well, there we go. Thanks, Jennifer. Everything from the very beginning of the process where, Perpetual met with a lot of different folks in the community to test, is this something that there's interest in? And we've, consistently heard, yes, there's actually wonderful and significant interest. And as you can see, this process goes all the way through launch and through system improvement. The mapping and engagement and system design phases are very intensive in terms of gathering data, understanding the context. This process involves a number of academic partners that bring research and data tools to support, to make sure that everything that's being created is science driven and data driven. Yeah, so like the circularity assessment protocol, for example, is a methodology that's been developed by the University of Georgia, and the life cycle assessment that you see here has been done by the University of Michigan, a group that does a lot of life cycle assessments. That's kind of their thing. And so, these are tools that help inform the design process together with all of the community engagement that you heard Jennifer talking about. So where we've gotten to in this process, as I'm sure it's very clear in this call, is having gone through this community design process to the point of having the design finalized. And then as we are lucky enough to have the grant funding that Jennifer described, once the design is finalized, we'll be moving into the system setup process. And that's where the county will issue an RFP that will help us choose the service providers that are going to actually operate the system. And we'll move into things like getting permits and purchasing equipment. And Paul will get very busy enrolling businesses in doing and participating in the system and getting everyone onboarded and ready to go. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of outreach and education campaigns, getting everything installed and tested, and then we move towards launch. So Jennifer, if you have your battery, I'm happy to hand it back to you.
Sorry
So,
about that. I'm like,
all
been
good.
in my room all day working, and I'm like, oh, I never thought about a charger. But anyways, I'm back. Sorry about that. Now it doesn't want to let me go. Stop sharing. Still not letting me go forward. Why? Okay, now it's working. All right, so now we're going to dive into the different system design elements. And so this is basically like all the decisions and pieces of the system that we've made decisions on when we went through those meetings earlier this year. So the first is the revenue model. This is essentially how the system is paid for. When I was talking about funding earlier, that is really just to get the pieces in place, right? To get the return bins, to get the infrastructure for the dishwashing and the trucks. All of those are really high startup costs to a reuse business. But that's not how the system will be paid for over time. There will be a way to generate revenue to support the system for the labor costs, for the cost of keeping the lights on, for the dishwashing facility, etc. So what we decided was to do a pay per reuse model. This is essentially offering a low per use cost fee for each reusable item. So it's very similar to what a business is paying right now. Currently, a business, pays a small amount of money for each disposable, so they'd just be paying a relatively comparable amount of money to what they're paying for disposables. What is that amount going to be? I know Paul is getting this question all the time. We don't know because it really depends on a lot of different factors. Perpetual has developed a model to work that amount out. I looked at it earlier this week. It was at 17 cents per reuse with all the different things that we had in there. It's going to depend too on how many businesses sign up initially to be a part of the system. The more volume of containers circulating, it's going to drive the cost down. One thing that we got some feedback on from businesses was to offer a lower per cost fee for higher volume usage. We got some in favor of that idea, and also some local business didn't think it would be equitable for smaller businesses that don't have a high volume of containers that are being used. But we decided to implement that because in reality, the more volume of containers in the system is going to benefit everyone, and it's going to benefit lower or smaller businesses that maybe don't have as much volume, if we can get some high volume businesses to sign up with this incentive, is going to benefit everyone. There, I have just some other options here, just so you're kind of aware of other types of revenue models. For example, a lot of them, it's like a subscription model where the consumer pays. We want to make sure that this is an equitable system that everyone has an opportunity to participate in. And I will move on. Oh, actually, I'll pause here. If anybody, like, if you have input or questions or feedback as we're going through, we can do this element by element. So I'll pause for a second if anybody has any input or feedback. You could also put it in the chat. See, hearing nothing, I will just move on. So the next piece of the system design is the reusable items. So where do we start? What types of containers? We did reach out to about 40 different businesses and got an input on the volumes of and types of containers that are currently being used. And we found that there are more containers used in Hilo than cups. So we decided to start with containers only. We also, in terms of what types of containers and what types of materials, well, we use a lot of bento boxes, obviously, lots of clamshells. So we'll start with those types of containers initially. For material type, we haven't seen a ton of enthusiasm for plastic. It's not like people are totally against it. 31% of the people we surveyed would actually prefer plastic over stainless steel. What we're learning now, as Autumn, who is sick tonight, and she wasn't able to join us from the Perpetual team, but she's been doing lots of research trying to find containers. And it's having quite a bit of a challenge finding stainless steel containers that are going to be stackable and like really have all the different characteristics that we need in a container. It's going to be important for like grab and go to be able to see the food. So we are seeing some challenges. I'd like to hear maybe tonight if there is really strong opposition to starting with plastic. You know, if we want to have a conversation about that at the end, it would be good to know that. I can show some examples of containers here. These are some of the stainless steel ones that Autumn has found. You see this one here has like a clear clear see-through top, which could be good. Some of them, I think, are stackable. These ones here, maybe not the one down here, the round one, I'm not sure. Glass also, there's one city in Europe, in Monaco, that does use glass containers. But, you know, glass is breakable, it's heavy. How would we design our return bins if we were having glass? This is consideration. So there's lots of logistical considerations. Plastic, you know, we already have like what's very similar to what we often use in our plate lunch type places with the 3 compartments. So, you know, every material type has its pros and cons, essentially. You know, stainless steel is a really durable material. It can last a long time, but it does have to be mined. You know, glass is probably the most sustainable, but like I already mentioned, it's very breakable and it's heavy. Plastic has all the negatives that we know about plastic, which is why we're trying to develop a system where we will use and generate a lot less waste. But it also has its benefits too. You know, it's lightweight. So I will go to the next slide to show you guys some examples of reusable school lunch trays, which the stainless steel are like pretty affordable. Oh, that's another thing I didn't mention is the cost too. The cost of stainless steel is much higher than plastic. Plastic makes a, you know, much more affordable transition and cost-wise for switching over to this system. The next important piece I've touched on a little bit is the tracking technology. Like I said, it's really important that we have a high return rates on the system. If we don't have really good return rates and people are keeping the containers, then that could be less environmentally sustainable than a disposable system. So there's ways to have it really kind of seamless checkout for the container. So the containers will be tracked with an RFID or a QR code. There's some pictures here over here showing like someone using their cell phone to scan a QR code on a cup. There's also this tap to reuse feature where you actually just tap the cup or container and it links the checkout of the item to your credit card. And so we've opted to go for that system. But as we know, like not everybody pays with a credit card. So we need another way to track the container to that person, which I'll go into a bit more detail in the next slide. I should mention though that the tracking it's important also for understanding the inventory of the containers and where they are at the system. Are they checked out or in the washing facility? Have they been returned? Helps to and there's actually a lot of advantages. Like for a restaurant, for example, they may not even need to order the containers when they're running low. We'll just automatically know that they're down to a certain level because of this tracking systems that are in place. So return incentives, this is the other piece of the tracking part that is really important that we get the containers back, right? And so how do we incentivize consumers to bring those containers? So we decided to implement a non-return fee. So basically for any consumer that wants to check out a container, it would cost them nothing upfront. It would just be free to check out the container. And they would need to return it within 1 week. If they did not return the container within 1 week, they couldn't, like maybe they live outside of Hilo and they don't make it into Hilo regularly enough, they could extend the checkout period upon request, kind of like you would extend your checkout period for a library book, for example. But then if the container is not returned, then the consumer would be charged a fee for not returning it. And if they did eventually return it, they would be reimbursed that money, just except for a small service fee. There's also the opportunity for abandoned items to be returned by anyone for a redemption value of 15 cents. And then in cases where people are not paying with credit card, there's like a token system, essentially. It could be like a prepaid card or a keychain where a certain amount of money would be paid for ahead, kind of like a deposit. And you could, pay first however many you wanted to have checked out at a time. And if you didn't return that, then you wouldn't be able to check out more containers. This could also be implemented for low income individuals that couldn't afford, and there could be programs in place that they don't have to pay for the cost up front and get so many containers that they could check out at a time. For the collection bins, we will deploy 75 to 100 bins at the time of launch. There'll be a mix of both tech-enabled and non-tech-enabled. The tech-enabled, essentially, you can scan the QR code and the door will open and it would check your container in right away. As opposed to the non-tech-enabled, they'd still be really a sturdy bin that would be one way, like a library book return bin. We eventually would hope to scale up to 325 containers placed predominantly within Hilo, with maybe some satellite return bins and up the coast, Kamakura coast. We've gotten a lot of input on locations. Got to mention earlier, but we did a series of community design workshops in October and also had lots of outreach that we did all of last year. And so these points here on the map are ones that the data science team selected, as well as pins that community members put on the map or use the app. You want to scan this QR code here, and then maybe Ellie, if you have access to the link, you could drop it in the chat as well. We also will have these redemption sites that I forgot to mention on the last slide. And this could be like Mr. K's or Atlas, or maybe the transfer station, or the areas that we're thinking of, where that's basically where we would bring the containers for the redemption value of 15 cents. Or if you just prefer to return your containers and hand them to a person as opposed to a return bin, that would be possible. Okay, so we're almost done. So the washing, we will have to establish a washing hub in a centralized location. Luckily, we do have that grant funding to do that. And yeah, we've tried to find some existing dishwashing infrastructure in Hilo. And although there are some locations or some dishwashers in our community, they're not really available for our use. So we do need to establish a new dishwashing hub. For the transport of the reusable items, we want to make sure that we optimize the collection route to be the most efficient. That's where the data science team that Ellie mentioned will help with finding the best route. And we'll use a mix of electric vehicles, both cargo bikes or trucks or vans. So for example, we could have a cargo bike that goes around downtown Hilo and picks up the containers and then meets up with a van to load them and drive them off to the dishwashing facility. For labor, we want to ensure that we're creating like good green jobs. That's one of the advantages of the system is creating local jobs. We want to make sure we pay a living wage and that there's good health benefits. And we could definitely partner with some of the workforce development organizations, perhaps Going Home Hawaii, working with Justice Involved, or creating other workforce opportunities for the disadvantaged community members. And finally, the last piece is the governance. We still are kind of working out the details here. I haven't totally figured everything out, but basically the governance is the oversight and management. So currently, because the county is the recipient of that Swiffer grant funding, their role currently is to oversee that grant, manage that funding. They'll be putting out a request for proposals to find the service operator. So Perpetual, the county, Zero Waste Hawaii Island, none of us are going to actually be the service operator. That's a business that's going to come in and do that work. So the county will, play the role in helping select that service operator by putting out the request for proposals. And then the other pieces of governance, the piece that we haven't really quite figured out yet is this reuse system management role. Yeah, so imagine in the future where there potentially are more than one service operator on island. We need to ensure that there's coordination and collaboration amongst those different entities. We also want to make sure that there's, an effective system-wide marketing and community engagement platform so that, between going to one place and another, maybe Kona and Hilo, that you see similar return bins, similar symbols that follow signage, that sort of thing. There's also other roles that this reuse system management role could play, but we're still, as I said, working out the details of that. And then I think the reuse service provider role is more or less, self-explanatory of what I've already talked about, which is like the logistical pieces of picking up the containers, maintaining the return bins, managing the washing and the tracking of the containers and that sort of thing. So all the system operation pieces. I'm happy to pause here for a second if anybody wants to ask questions or share.
There is one question in the chat. Lori asked, why was reusable lunch plates taken away from schools? And then it looks like there's another question after that, but why don't you start with that one?
So we actually met with the people that oversee the operations of the cafeteria. And I guess in the 60s, it was around that time. Is that, am I remembering correctly, the year? Was around the 60s that they made the, or maybe it was the 70s in Hilo that they transitioned
than
away.
The 60s. I think it's been a shift over the last 20 years or so. 30.
Yeah, I think it was just disposable providers convinced schools that it would be cost effective, and I think Ella can do a better job of answering this question than I can.
No, I think you're answering it well. I think that schools found it to be I think that there was an article, there was an articulation, there was an argument that disposables would help them avoid labor costs, would simplify their operations, would save them money over time. I don't think that has been the case, you know, in all situations. I know that there's some really informative case studies on schools that are switching back to reusables, and they're finding that in that case, it's actually saving them money compared to what they're spending on disposables right now. So we know that the efficiency of the system matters, you know, where is the dishwashing happening? Like, there's a lot of things that can impact whether money is being saved or not. But one of the challenges is that, you know, some schools have not only, you know, switched to disposables, that they've done away with their dishwashing facilities completely. So many schools don't even have the space to put a dishwasher anymore, or maybe they don't have any dishwasher left. So there is a transition that would need to happen to support schools in this. But there's some really great case studies that are showing the value of switching back to reusables, both for schools and looking at when we think about some of the chemicals of concern that are present in the disposables that are being used and the sensitivity of children as a population to those chemicals, I think there's a cost argument, but there's also other important considerations as well.
Thank you. So the next question is, as a consumer, what is my responsibility when returning the containers? Essentially, you just need to turn them in, you know, within that 1 week period. And if you can't, then extend your period. Be responsible and return it. Yes, you can return it dirty, caked with, you know, old food. We hope you don't. Like, you know, 1 week's not that long, so hopefully there wouldn't. But it could be, you know, like if it's sitting in the back of your car for 1 week, it could be gross.
And Jennifer, I want to jump in that and say, we prefer that you return it dirty rather than cleaning it, to return it, because it has to be washed again anyway. And if you've already washed it at your house, even if it's or somewhere else, even if it's clean, it has to be washed again for the hygiene standards of the system. And washing it twice is not great for the environment or for cost, you know, your cost, you know, the system's cost. So returning it dirty. Now, caked with old food, yes, as Jennifer said, maybe return it sooner if you're able to. But, you know, if that's not possible, we're happy to just get it back in whatever format that it's in. And as long as you return it, you would not be charged for damage to the container. Obviously, we hope that people will do their best to care for the containers, but we understand things get dropped, things happen. You know, your responsibility is just to return it. The only situation when you get charged is for not returning it at all. So if it gets damaged, please still bring it back. At least we know what happened to it, and you don't have to pay for it.
Do we have any other questions right now? Any feedback? I mean, because we are really here to like hear you guys tell us, like, we don't think this piece is going to work, or, you know, because this is our opportunity to make changes based on the input. Did you want to say something, Jen?
Yeah, hi, it's Jen Kagiwara. I was just wondering when we might have some actual physical samples of potentially what they might look like for people to look at. Because I'm thinking there's a lot more people than the people that are here tonight. And I feel like that would start to really draw people in and get them like, oh, this is really happening. Is that something that might be coming up pretty soon?
Yes.
Well, right now, yeah, we do have like some examples. Will these be the top contenders of the types of containers we'll use? I don't know about that. So Autumn has been working diligently to find, you know, I think Ellie might be more familiar, but I think she's looking for like what could work for us to actually have like, it's going to be one of these three, you know. Is that accurate?
She's ordering samples.
She's already ordered them. Okay.
She has not yet, but she actually may have. We confirmed the cost, and it's, you know, going to be on its way very soon. Getting some different options. One thing that we haven't ruled out completely, given, as Jennifer noted, that some of what's on the market today doesn't quite meet the need of what we think would be the best option in Hilo, given the feedback that we've received so far and what we know about all the things. So it's still possible that there could be a custom manufacturing option for the system in Hilo. There's enough lead time from now until when we think the system could launch. That would have obviously a little bit more lead time, but I think it would be, we don't want to be too limited by what's been on the market so far, knowing that this is an area where innovation is very needed right now. Ellen, I see that you have your hand up. We had one other question in the chat. So maybe if this is something you want to say specifically on what we're talking about, then jump in. Otherwise, we'll go to the chat next.
Yes, absolutely. Some of us are following, the developments in reusable foodware, and there are definitely new products that are coming into, into the R&D stage. For example, stainless steel, it's wonderful, but if you want to have a hinged top or a see-through top, then you have two pieces. Sorry, not a hinged top, but a see-through top. You have two pieces, and then it becomes a problem. But there are some products that are being developed. So yeah, I think we're seeing some changes, good changes.
Thanks, Ellen. There was a question in the chat. Will there be support contracts for maintenance of the vehicles, dishwashing equipment, scanning devices, etc.? It may be better to contract this part out. Jennifer, do you want to say anything about that?
You maybe have a better answer than I might.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
We agree that it may be better to contract this part out. In each of these cases, including the technology that Jennifer described, ensuring the ongoing viability of the system is obviously essential, and making sure that things can be repaired and and maintained to continue serving the system is really critical. And having some backup plans in place as well, in case something, the part you need, it's going to take a week to get that part. Well, then what do you do in the meantime? You can't just let the dishes pile up. So that's definitely part of the plan as well. And there's a role in the system that I think Jennifer voiced over also, which is kind of overall system management. And so there can, as the contracting happens for different pieces of the system, whether it's one entity or multiple entities that are doing these roles, service contracts will be part of those contracts. So yes, is the long and the short answer. And then I think we had one more question come in. As a participating business, if someone were to come in and try to return their containers to my business, what would be the protocol? Tell them to go to a redemption bin, or do I need to take it from them? I love that question. Very practical. The idea is that there would actually be a collection bin at every participating business, either indoors, if the business owner is open to that, or outdoors or sort of very nearby. And so the goal would be that business owners you never have to like take it back. You don't have to take it across the counter into your kitchen. That's not what we would want you to do. We would want you to let people know that where they could return it to a nearby bin. And if we've done our work well, then the bin would be extremely convenient and nearby and easy for them to return it to. So that's the idea. But the goal is to make this as seamless and sort of easy as possible for businesses, because we know how much businesses are already managing on a day-to-day basis. And so the easier this can be, and the more consistent with sort of how you're already used to doing things is definitely the goal. I don't see any more questions in the chat at the moment, but you guys keep them coming.
I can go over those other questions if.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, Jennifer? I think that's a good idea.
All right, keep talking. So these are some of the questions we got back, we received when we did our April meeting, and we wanted to address some of them today. So one of the questions was about the county possibly being better equipped to find dependable staff. Why can't the county be the operating entity? I think the county would differ in that. I think this is kind of already in the realm of what the county would contract out. For example, the county contracts out our recycling programs. Like the county doesn't actually do the recycling piece. They contract to business services currently for the cardboard and the glass. And we do have the Kono decision in Hawaii, which basically prevents the privatization of public services. So if this is something that became a public service, it would have to remain a public service. It could not go back to the private sector. If it's like, oh, it's not working out with the county, let's just have a private entity do that. We would kind of be tied into that, to the county playing that role in perpetuity. So we definitely think we should start out with the county. I'm not with the county, but with a private entity running the business or running the service operating piece. I mean, it could come into play that we look into a different revenue model in the future that could be the county paying to contract. Yeah, that is a possibility, a potential thing, but we'd like to see if, you know, this is a sustainable system on its own without tax dollar input. And is there anything else on this answer? So, go to the next one. What if no one is interested in becoming the service provider? We don't think that this will be a problem. We imagine for Galveston, for example, they already went through their request for proposals process. They had 10 responses to that. So we anticipate that there will be some interest. There's quite a few startups doing this work. And we really, in Hilo, we would, you know, many of us on our team would really like to see a local business step up and play this role. So we'll see. I think we're planning some engagement to basically cover or go over, present to local businesses that may be interested, or any businesses that may be interested on the RFP process and providing support in responding to an RFP as well. How are we going to get people to bring the items back? Will there be reminder apps? Can we include a point system or have rewards? And the answer is yes. So basically, the financial incentive is that if you don't bring it back, you're going to be charged for it and you'll own it. And so I think that's proven to be a bit more effective than a deposit system, especially when the cost of the containers are pretty high. If the deposit is like $5, that's a deterrent that would make it hard for people to participate in the system. So that's one incentive. There's other non-financial incentives we could look at. This is like a point system, right? Like for every 5 coffees you return, you get a free one, or, you know, like we already have kind of similar to those, like you eat at a place 10 times and you get a free dinner. So those types of, we've heard a lot of input and interest in that, and in the community engagement that we've done for the last year. There's also gamification, you know, return 10 containers and you're get the super reusable badge or something like that. Messaging will also be important. So really great signage and also communication amongst workers. So that's where Paul's role can come into play, of like actually training workers to let people know, especially when it's new, you know, there's this new reusable system. This is how it works, how it functions. And then convenience is really important, right? We want to make sure return bins are on people's routes as they go about their daily life. So, you know, going at the post office, at your kid's school, at the transfer station, at all the different shops that we're going to. We don't want people to have to go out of their way to return the containers, especially if they're already out and about and you drink your coffee and you're done with it. If there's a return bin on your route home, as opposed to taking it home with you, that would be ideal. And last is just something I already mentioned, which is gamification. We had a comment at our last feedback session where someone actually was like suggested doing gamification, like with having really a fun return bins that would engage people to want to interact with them. I did forget to mention too that there will be, you know, an app that you could download optionally that would give you reminders or text messages. Oh, your container is due in 2 days, or that sort of thing that would help remind people about returning their containers. And I think that is the last of the questions. Did we get any other questions in the chat?
We did.
There's more.
From Jen Kagiwara, will food trucks be able to participate?
Yes.
Yes. It's a short answer. From John asked, what is the state health department's position on pest control for the bin and certification of the process?
So we actually just met with them last week, I think. Yeah, it was last week. Today's Monday. And that was actually their biggest concern was the pests. Because I guess they already get complaints just for rubbish bins. But when we told them that the county was really like overseeing the RFP and they realized it really wasn't their kuleana to scold people if there are problems with the return bins, they seemed a lot less concerned. So their main concern is around complaints and them having to deal with complaints for the return bins. You know, they are designed in a way that would help avoid problems with pests. And also, you know, we can know when a return bin is full if it's a tech-enabled bin. So there's like actually more checks in place, I think, than for the returns for our rubbish cans, for example. Like if its container is full and we know, it can be serviced immediately, as opposed to garbage cans in downtown Hilo, and some of them are overflowing always. Like there's certain ones next to the farmers market that are like always overflowing, but the county comes every 3 days, I think, to pick up the rubbish. There's a lot more flexibility with this system to help with managing those pest problems. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Ellie, to that.
No, I think you've covered that answer. John, if you have follow-up questions, let us know. The next question was from Kavika. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Are the collection bins leak or smell proof? As a business, I would be hesitant to put one in indoors for a couple of reasons: potential for smells, leaks, and spills. And then collection logistics. If indoors, the collections would have to take place during business hours. And I'm not sure I would appreciate that type of activity going on in public view in my establishment.
Do you want to answer that,
Jennifer? Yeah, happy to.
Okay.
The bins are totally contained. So I think leak smell proof is probably, I'm not sure I would say they're like totally leak and smell proof, in that if there's something extremely foul, maybe you would be able to smell it. But as Jennifer mentioned, the way that they're serviced is that the entire inside piece comes out and gets swapped out and swapped back in. So it's not like a bin liner where maybe things are leaking and things are getting gross. It's very, the whole thing is getting swapped out when it's full. And it's very contained. So it's the potential for spills, leaks, and smells is very low. I do appreciate your comment on if it was something that was indoors, it limits, then you have to do collections during business hours and that it's sort of in view of customers. Yeah, I think that would be a good reason to put it outside. I think in some cases indoor bins are appropriate and could make sense, but it does matter, what the business hours are and what the context is. If you have a pretty small space, we understand that having something indoors is not going to make sense. Or if it's such that it would just not work for the business, even if you have plenty of space, but for other reasons it's not workable, that's understandable. And so the goal is to have, really robust network of collection bins, but in places that work and make sense. So Paul, I know you've already had some conversations with folks about this. Is this something that you've already talked with folks about a little bit?
Yeah, definitely those concerns, as well as how often they'd be visited and if their staff would have to partake in dealing with any of these issues that arise on business hours. And like you mentioned, I think that's a great point that I know for a lot of business owners it's something they don't want to deal with, and that's fine, but we would like to make more convenient for you folks, and in places that would better suit not only your customers, but people in the community. So definitely.
And I don't know, in my mind, I don't see it being a lot different than a garbage can. Like we put our food where our disposables in a garbage can. And they sit there sometimes, like I said, the downtown outdoor Hilo ones, they pick up every 3 days. So I guess I just don't, I personally don't see a huge distinction. I got to understand a little bit talking to the Department of Health that like their concern is with the volume of containers or of return bins that will be present, which is much higher than our rubbish cans. But you know, I don't think we typically have a ton of spills and smell problems with our garbage cans. You know, even when they get some of them, if they're popular, they fill up really quickly. And they're going to be taken care of relatively, you know, within a day or two. So it's not like rotting food's going to be sitting there for days on end, smelling. So I don't know. That's just the way it works in my brain, and maybe I'm wrong. But I don't see it
I think
that
you're
much
right.
different.
One thing that may be comforting to some is that we are currently on track to implement a system just like, well, not just like this, because it's been designed specifically for Galveston, but in this general concept in Galveston, Texas, which has a similar climate and similar on the ground realities as Hilo. And our current timeline has us launching that system in October. So I think we'll definitely have some initial learnings from there about all of these things. As Jennifer mentioned, there are some existing systems that are operating today and, you know, in a very similar context. The one in Monaco, you know, not quite the same climate, and some of the, you know, considerations that you would be thinking about, but I think many of those return bins are indoors, and they're very clean and hygienic and lovely. There's another system in Denmark in a city called Aarhus. It's only been winter there since they launched it in January, so we don't quite know what it'll be like in summer. And I don't think their summer is quite like a summer in Hilo, but they've also had no issues with smells or pests or anything like that. So I think these are things that we have a lot of ideas for how to manage it. And when we get into it, if there are things that are challenges, then that's something that we'll figure it out, I guess, is sort of the best answer I have at this point. This is new, right? These are things that Hilo won't be the first city to figure some of this stuff out. Like I said, there's other cities that are going to be, you know, wrestling with this ahead of time, but there will be things to troubleshoot along the way. And so, you know, we talked earlier about the service contracts. One of the service contracts is for bin maintenance. So making sure not just that they are working, but that they stay clean and sanitary. And like if there does start to be a smell or an issue like that, that it gets resolved super quickly, and that service contract is in place so that it never disrupts business. It never becomes an issue for business owners or their customers or anyone like that. So, you know, that is the quality control that will be established from the very beginning.
So since there's a pause and questions, I'm sorry. So all of you that attended tonight, we're going to give out gift cards for the Locavore store as an incentive and a thank you for coming tonight. So if you want to just put in the direct chat, you can directly message either me or Ellie or even Paul. Maybe just one of us would be ideal. Maybe just message Ellie. Just put your address in the chat and we will mail you a gift card for the Locavore store for participating tonight.
Yeah, I will capture all of those and make sure that we get them. If your name is not clear from the name that you have on Zoom, if you could include your name as well, just so we know who to address it to make sure it gets to the right person.
Do we have any other questions?
I was wondering, since we have a little bit of time, could we go around and have introductions from those who are, since I kind of miss everyone, seeing them in person like we did last time.
Yeah, it's been like I know, I'm the same when I'm like zooming in. It's like, I just want to listen, camera off. I'm here to absorb. But if anybody is comfortable with unmuting and maybe even turning on your camera and introduce yourself. I think I know a lot of you, but there's some some new names. So if anybody would like to introduce yourself, you could do that. Don't jump all at once.
I'll start. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
John Elkier, I'm the CEO of Sustainable Island Products. Jennifer knows this, that I tried to do this back in 2017 and it failed miserably. And I just hope that you don't run into the difficulties that I did, because there's a lot of them, but you got a lot more horsepower behind you than we did then. So best of luck. I just want to jump in and say hello and thanks for doing what you're doing. I got to run, but bye all.
Thank you, John. Thanks for joining. Anybody else?
I guess I'll
Malu,
go.
are you there, Malu?
I am here. Let's see. I'm here. Thank you all for putting this on. It's a great program. And I'm the owner of Abundant Life in Hilo, Abundant Life Natural Foods. We've been here for 47 years now. That's all. Thank you.
How do you, Malu, I know you guys have a lot of grab and go foods that you sell. What is it important to you to have kind of like that see-through container that customers can see what they're purchasing?
I like the stainless steel. I like glass also, but I see the problem of people dropping it and maybe they break and it move. I really wouldn't be happy to see the program start with plastic.
Good. That's good to know, because that's we want to hear that. If there's kind of strong opposition to plastic, it's good to know that as we're trying to find something.
Yeah, I didn't answer the question. Customers do want to see it. I think in the beginning, we would have to have two options. One that people can see, or else a picture, and then one that's contained in the container. Or like how Japanese restaurants in Japan make the fake food as a sample.
Yeah, I've thought of that as just like an example of
a picture or something.
One thing I'll offer, the program in Monaco is the one that's using glass, and they say that breakage has not been an issue. They have 98.9% return rate, and Dagny, our another perpetual person, actually went to Monaco and tried it out and accidentally dropped the container on the cement sidewalk and it didn't break, so.
It did or it didn't?
It did not break. She dropped it from, as standing up as an adult, dropped it onto a sidewalk and it did not break. So point of data, that's not doesn't promise anything other than what it is, but they've had very good luck with glass.
Intentionally to test the container?
She didn't. No, she just dropped it by mistake and she said, she was like, and it just landed and there's not a mark on it. You'd never know.
Personally, I prefer glass. Some cheaper stainless steel ingredients aren't that great.
That's true. Is any of your grab and go food hot? Because that could be a challenge with glass or with stainless steel if it's not insulated.
Grab and go, that would be ordered at the window, and that would be like a hot sandwich or something.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't see it before they order it.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense.
Malu.
Thank you, Malu.
Thank you.
Malu, this is Ellen. Lori was asking if you sell stainless steel containers at your store, and I don't know if you restocked, but I bought your last two bento
yes. We haven't for a while, but I'll look into bringing some back in again. We sold them for years.
They're great. I think
know.
Shadi at Hanaho has a single one too for Lori.
The Tiffins, yeah? That's
Yeah.
okay.
So Tammy, I feel like you were about to introduce yourself. You unmuted for a second.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
My name is Tammy Romangmao. I had the privilege of working with Ellen and Jennifer for a bit earlier this year. I'm a teacher at Hilo High School, so just having my students witness this project in its early stages and hopefully in the near future before they graduate high school, it sort of is empowering and also something they can take pride in, knowing that their town that they live in is working towards a healthier earth, as we all need to remind ourselves that we live all on the same planet and there's only one planet right now and we must take care of it. So yeah, I'm just very grateful to be a part and know about this project. And thank you, Ellen, for reaching out earlier this school year, because without you, our students would not have known how much their voices matter, especially at this day and age. So thank you, both of you, and Perpetual for putting this all together and just keeping it up, even though it is daunting and stressful and a lot of work and thought has to go into it. But I'm excited and my students are as well. So thank you, thank you.
Thank you,
You're
Tammy.
welcome, Tammy. Thank you.
So, any other questions or feedback, or should we end early?
I have not received any addresses. So
No,
if people,
nobody
just
wants
to
gift
say,
cards?
if people want, I'm sure, I mean, I'm sure everyone wants a gift card, but I think everyone's being very polite. So, yeah, just wanted to let people know if you've tried sending it, I have not received it, or if you're being polite, thank you, but also feel free to claim your gift card. You've earned it.
I'll put also, if you're more comfortable, you can send by email, but we would need your name. All right, just putting the email in chat if you want to send us your address and name that way. And I think we can close out if no one else has any input or questions.
Jen, do you want to make sure that apparently people somehow got the invitation, so that's great. So do you want to just mention what the timeline is, like what's next?
Yeah, so we hope to finalize the system design plan by the end of June. Anticipate that we will not have any problems doing that because, as is similar as tonight, people have questions and interests, but nothing that's really guiding us to make changes to the draft system design. So once that is finalized and we get the money from the EPA, which we're still waiting for, we will put out the, finalize the request for proposals and put that out to find a system operator. And then in the later part of this year, we'll be setting up, getting all the equipment, getting the dishwashing facility and set up and in place. And we hope to launch the program early next year, potentially in February. And Paul will be very busy. So, Paul right now is starting to collect the volume data, trying to, build relationships with the businesses as well as schools and some community organizations. If you guys, anyone here knows of some community organizations that might be interested in participating, we have yet to really identify any that would want to participate in the program. But haven't been putting my mental energy there, so I probably should start doing that. But yeah, is there anything you want to share or add, Paul?
No, but yeah, definitely. If you guys have any of those community organizations in mind that do food programs, and I guess as well as if you're a regular at a business, I mean, I'm reaching out to most businesses here in Hilo, but if you as a customer can always bring up or maybe suggest to somebody at that business that, yeah, maybe they might want to participate in this program. Yeah. But so far, the response is great. Everybody's open to this program. I guess the next big question, yeah, is just what are we going with? What's the design? What's the material? And we'll get that soon here. That's what everybody wants to know.
Is Kavika still?
Yeah,
It looks like you're still connected, Kavika.
I think he got off the line.
I think he's
Ellen.
gone,
Or
yeah.
did he?
Yeah, was curious.
Okay.
Kavika's still here.
Oh, he's here.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering, Kavika, what is your business? Maybe. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe not able to unmute. I know that Zoom can be tricky sometimes in that way.
Okay.
So I sent a note in the chat. I think it was probably confusing because Jennifer, you called me Ellie, which is of course my name, but Perpetual is who I am on Zoom at the moment. So it may have been confusing to folks. Ellen, you may have received some addresses. So if you did, please make a note of them. And I just dropped my email in the chat here. And I think Jennifer, you were also going to send your email address in the chat, but I don't think it came through. So make sure you send it to everyone.
Oh, I think I sent it directly to someone.
Yeah. So if you send it to everybody, then if people send your address either to me or to Jennifer. And one thing to know is that it is a physical card. So your email address will not help you in terms of getting the physical card. So you have to send us your mailing address and we can mail it to you. And it looks like Kavika sent me a direct message. No business on the island currently, but in the industry over 20 years, family restaurant business on another island. So
oh, great.
That is the response.
Yeah. Hello, Kavika.
Thank you for your excellent questions. So
I don't see anything that I got directly. It looks like Frank and Jean.
Yes, we have email addresses from them.
Yeah.
But I think if
Christine.
it's possible to get mailing addresses, or we can reach out via email and figure out another way to get you what you need. So all good. We will figure it out.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I think happy to let everyone go, have dinner with your families and do whatever people do in the evenings, watch TV. And we'll just hang on here for a few minutes or a minute if anyone else wanted to drop their home address in the chat. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming and learning.
Mahalo. Nice to meet folks and see some of you again.